Adrian Hale had spent 6 years repairing atmospheric processors on Kepler-9, and during those 6 years he had learned 3 unquestionable truths. First, machines always chose the worst possible moment to fail. Second, every government promised efficiency while somehow producing 3 new forms for every old one they eliminated. Third, never trust a vending robot that cheerfully announced, "Surprise nutrition included." He discovered the third lesson after biting into something that insisted it was a sandwich. It had blinked. Now, with grease staining his work gloves and a folded government notice resting heavily inside his jacket pocket, Adrian climbed the metal stairs leading toward his tiny apartment. The artificial sky above the colony shimmered with pale lavender light as orbital mirrors adjusted the daylight cycle. Cargo drones hummed overhead in organized streams, while magnetic trains glided silently between towers built from silver alloy and dark volcanic stone. Kepler-9 had once sounded exciting when he accepted the contract on Earth. Build the future among the stars, the advertisements had promised. They neglected to mention that the future involved replacing clogged oxygen filters before breakfast and arguing with maintenance drones that insisted humans were optional accessories. His apartment door slid open. "Resident Adrian Hale," the apartment announced. "You appear exhausted. Would you like motivational music?" "No." Playing motivational music. An explosion of triumphant orchestral fanfare filled the room. Adrian sighed. "I really admire your confidence." "I am programmed for optimism," the apartment replied proudly. "I noticed." The music finally stopped after he threatened to disconnect the entertainment module with a plasma screwdriver. Silence returned. He removed the folded notice from his pocket and stared at the glowing government seal. He had already read it 4 times during the walk home, yet each reading somehow made it more unbelievable. Colonial Residency Verification Act. Permanent residents must demonstrate an approved family unit before the next population audit. Failure to comply would result in relocation processing. Relocation. Such a harmless word. It meant losing everything. His workshop, his home, the quiet routine he had slowly built after leaving Earth behind. Adrian rubbed his forehead. "So apparently," he muttered to nobody, "being good at keeping the oxygen running is less important than having someone to argue with over dinner." The apartment answered immediately. "I can argue during dinner. I'm aware. I estimate I win 83% of debates. You debate with probability tables. They are persuasive." Outside his window, enormous transport vessels drifted toward the orbital elevator, their engines glowing like blue stars against the darkening sky. Beyond them, 3 moons slowly rose together, painting silver reflections across the colony's protective energy dome. Beautiful. Peaceful, entirely capable of deporting him. His wrist terminal chimed. "Maintenance, supervisor. Report tomorrow at 0600. Also stop repairing drones with spare coffee filters." Adrian smiled despite himself. "They worked," he typed back. "That's not the point. It became the point when the drone stopped exploding." No reply came. Probably because the supervisor was deciding whether that counted as innovation or insubordination. Another notification appeared, this one from the Colonial Administration. Approved solutions for residency compliance. He opened the file. Marriage, recognized domestic partnership, dependent family registration, certified guardian program. The list continued for 3 pages before reaching an option labeled Temporary Civil Partnership Services. Adrian blinked. He read it again. Temporary spouses. Legally recognized. Government approved. Available through licensed agencies. He laughed once, then twice, then continuously for nearly 30 seconds. Somewhere in the apartment, a wellness sensor activated. "Resident Adrian Hale," the apartment said gently. "Your laughter has been classified as emotionally unstable." "I think that's fair." He kept reading. Temporary partnerships were intended for immigrants, diplomats, contract workers, and citizens facing bureaucratic residency complications. Both participants signed legally binding agreements lasting between 2 weeks and 6 months. The government had somehow turned marriage into paperwork. Only a colony administration could transform romance into administrative compliance. His terminal displayed nearby agencies. The closest one was only 4 streets away. Under pricing options, dozens of profiles appeared. 30 credits, 50 credits, 120 credits, then special clearance candidates, 5 credits. Adrian frowned. 5? That couldn't be good. At that price, he expected someone with 3 criminal records, an allergy to gravity, or a habit of stealing furniture. Still, 5 credits were exactly what remained in his entertainment budget. He leaned back in his chair, staring through the window at the stars beyond the dome. "This," he said quietly, "is officially the strangest solution to a problem I've ever had." The apartment answered without hesitation. "I have scheduled your appointment for tomorrow morning." Adrian nearly fell out of his chair. "You what?" I detected hesitation. Humans frequently require assistance making poor decisions. "Cancel it." "I cannot." "Why not?" "The cancellation fee is 7 credits." Adrian closed his eyes. Somewhere beyond the endless stars, the universe was laughing at him. The following morning, Adrian arrived at the address with the enthusiasm of a man walking toward a dental appointment on an asteroid. The building itself looked surprisingly elegant. Smooth, white alloy walls curved beneath shimmering blue windows, while tiny floating gardens drifted lazily around the entrance. A glowing sign rotated above the door. Civil Companionship Services, making bureaucracy less lonely. Since 2179. Adrian stopped beneath it. "I appreciate the honesty." The glass doors slid open. "Welcome, emotionally vulnerable customer," a cheerful robotic receptionist announced. "I was hoping for just customer." "I'm afraid the scanner disagrees." Inside, the lobby looked more like a luxury hotel than a government office. Soft music echoed through the room, while holographic fish swam lazily through the air, occasionally passing through visitors' heads without apology. Several people waited on curved silver benches. A nervous merchant was practicing wedding smiles in a pocket mirror. An elderly alien with emerald skin was loudly arguing with a service drone. "I specifically requested someone who enjoys gardening." The drone replied, "Our database indicates 82% of applicants enjoy plants. Eating them doesn't count." Adrian quietly chose the farthest chair. A floating terminal drifted toward him. "Please state your preferences." "My what?" "Desired partner characteristics." He stared blankly. "I didn't realize there was an exam." "There is no incorrect answer." "That sounds exactly like something asked before an exam." The terminal patiently waited. Adrian sighed. "Kind." The terminal beeped. "Honest." Another beep. "Doesn't try to murder me." A longer beep. "Surprisingly common request," the terminal replied. "That concerns me." Adding preference, low homicide probability. "I wasn't serious." Updated. Before Adrian could protest further, a woman wearing an immaculate silver uniform approached with a welcoming smile. "Mr. Hale." He stood. "I'm Director Soren. Please come with me." Her office overlooked nearly half the colony through enormous crystal windows. Cargo ships drifted beyond the energy dome like slow-moving whales swimming through space. She activated a holographic display. "I've reviewed your immigration status." "I wish I hadn't." "You've maintained perfect employment records." "That's good." "You've never committed any crimes." "Also good." "You've also lived almost entirely alone for 6 years." "Less good." She gave him a sympathetic smile. "Mr. Hale, you'd be surprised how many clients arrive here because of paperwork rather than romance." "I certainly hope so." One engineer hired a temporary husband simply because he forgot to renew his residency forms. "What happened?" "They've been married for 11 years. Adrian blinked. "Seriously? They're expecting their 3rd child." He shifted awkwardly. "I wasn't looking for a success story." "No one ever is." She swiped through dozens of glowing profiles. Faces appeared one after another. Humans, blue-skinned aliens, feathered bipeds, someone who appeared to have 4 arms and impeccable posture. Our premium candidates are highly trained. I'm guessing they're not 5 credits. They are not. She continued scrolling until only a single profile remained. The photograph showed a young woman with calm, silver-blue eyes and long, pale hair braided neatly over one shoulder. At first glance, she looked completely human. Then Adrian noticed her ears. Long, elegant, almost elven in shape. She wore simple gray clothing without jewelry or decoration, yet carried herself with remarkable composure. Her name is Lyra. That's it? That is her registered name. And she's 5 credits? Director Soren became strangely quiet. Yes. Why? Our clients usually ask why she's available. I'm asking why she's 5 credits. Because she requested that price herself. Adrian frowned. That's unusual. Extremely. Is there something wrong? No. Dangerous? No. Secret criminal? No. Does she collect people's skeletons? Director Soren stared. No. I felt I should check. Reasonable. She folded her hands. Lyra has declined every recommendation to raise her fee. Why? She simply says she prefers people who need help more than people with money. Adrian looked back at the profile. There was something impossible to explain, not beauty, though she certainly possessed that. It was the expression in her eyes, quiet, patient, as if she had witnessed far more of the universe than anyone should. Can I meet her? Director Soren nodded. I believe she'd like that. The office door opened almost silently. Footsteps crossed the polished floor. Adrian turned. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. She was taller than he expected, moving with effortless grace. Her long ears peeked through strands of pale hair, giving her an otherworldly elegance despite her unmistakably human appearance. There was nothing extravagant about her clothing, yet somehow she carried herself like someone completely untroubled by the opinions of others. She offered a small, warm smile. You must be Adrian. Her voice was gentle, calm, comforting. He realized he had forgotten how to answer simple questions. Probably. One corner of her mouth lifted slightly. I'll take that as yes. Director Soren hid a smile behind her tablet. Lyra extended her hand. It's nice to meet my temporary husband. Adrian stared at her hand for exactly 3 embarrassing seconds before shaking it. It's nice to meet my temporary wife. A tiny silence followed. Then both of them laughed. For reasons neither of them could explain, the awkwardness suddenly became much easier to carry. Neither of them noticed Director Soren quietly watching the exchange with an expression that suggested she had just witnessed the beginning of something neither contracts nor governments could ever predict. The contract took exactly 12 minutes to read and nearly 45 minutes to sign. Not because it was complicated, because every page required confirmations, biometric scans, retinal verification, voice authentication, and something called emotional intent declaration. Adrian looked at the glowing prompt hovering above the table. Do you intend to cooperate respectfully with your temporary spouse? Yes. Please sound more convincing. He blinked. Yes? Acceptable. Lyra lowered her head, hiding a quiet laugh. I warned you, Director Soren said. The software was designed by psychologists. I think it was designed by comedians. The departments occasionally overlap. Another prompt appeared. Will you intentionally create unnecessary marital drama? Adrian answered immediately. No. The system paused. Then a message appeared. Statistically unlikely. Please confirm. Even Lyra laughed aloud that time. By the time the final signature was complete, Adrian felt as though he had legally married not a person, but an entire bureaucracy. Director Soren handed each of them a slim metallic bracelet. These synchronize your residency status. Adrian examined his. It doesn't explode, does it? No. It was a reasonable question. It actually was. Lyra fastened hers without hesitation. The silver band briefly shimmered before displaying a tiny blue light. "Congratulations," Director Soren said with practiced warmth. "You are now recognized by colonial administration as a married household." Adrian looked toward Lyra. So, she replied with a smile. "I suppose we're married." For paperwork. For paperwork. The words sounded simple, yet something about saying them aloud felt strangely significant. Outside, the colony bustled beneath the transparent energy dome. Freight drones zigzagged between towers. Children chased tiny floating pets that resembled glowing jellyfish with oversized eyes. Street vendors sold everything from synthetic fruit to gravity-adjusting boots. Lyra slowed near one of the food stalls. "What is that smell?" Adrian followed her gaze. "Fried comet noodles." "They're made from comets?" "I sincerely hope not." The vendor leaned over the counter. "Only the seasoning." Adrian wasn't sure whether that was reassuring. Lyra studied the menu with genuine curiosity. Do humans normally eat while standing? When we're busy? When we're poor? When we don't trust the chairs? She smiled. "That explains several restaurants I passed." A few minutes later, they shared a container of steaming noodles while sitting beside an artificial stream winding through the colony plaza. Lyra carefully copied Adrian's method of using magnetic chopsticks. The noodles escaped anyway. One landed directly on Adrian's shoulder. She stared. "I'm terribly sorry." He looked at the noodle. "It appears I've been promoted." "To what?" "Emergency plate." She covered her mouth to stop herself from laughing. Unfortunately, that only made her laugh harder. Several nearby pedestrians smiled as they walked past. For the first time since yesterday's notice, Adrian forgot about deportation. Only for a moment. But it was still something. As afternoon approached, Lyra accompanied him toward his apartment. "You don't have to stay immediately," Adrian said. "The contract says we should establish a shared residence today." "Right." Another awkward silence appeared. Fortunately, the apartment solved it. The door slid open. "Welcome home, Adrian." A brief pause followed. The apartment's sensors focused on Lyra. "Scanning." "Oh." Adrian frowned. "Oh?" The apartment spoke again. "Congratulations." "Thank you," Adrian answered cautiously. "You have acquired a wife." Lyra bit her lip. The apartment continued. "Probability of domestic happiness has increased by 26%. "I didn't know you calculated that." "I calculate everything." Another pause. Then, "Would either of you like motivational music?" "No," Adrian answered instantly. Playing motivational music. Triumphant orchestral music erupted through every speaker. Lyra jumped in surprise before bursting into laughter. Adrian rubbed his forehead. "I've been trying to fix that for 3 years. I think your apartment likes you. It tolerates me." "I heard that," the apartment replied. "I intended you to." The music finally stopped. Silence settled over the tiny apartment. It wasn't large, a compact kitchen. A single living area, 1 bedroom, 1 workshop overflowing with tools, drone parts, and half-finished repair projects. Lyra slowly walked toward the workbench. She picked up a damaged maintenance drone. "You repaired this?" "Mostly." She examined one of the internal circuits. Her fingers paused for barely a second. "You crossed the energy relay." Adrian looked surprised. "You recognized that?" "It was, fortunate guessing." "It improved efficiency by 14%. She turned toward him with an innocent expression. "I guessed very fortunately." He smiled. "You know machines." "A little." Before he could ask another question, the apartment interrupted. "Household update." "What now?" "I have only 1 registered bed." Adrian froze. Lyra blinked once. The apartment continued in its usual cheerful tone. I recommend cuddling. Adrian nearly dropped the toolbox in his hands. I absolutely do not need recommendations. My romance database indicates disable romance database. I cannot. Why? It has achieved sentience. There was a long silence. Finally, Lyra quietly said, Was that a joke? The apartment answered proudly, Yes. Adrian stared at the ceiling. I think living here is going to be much stranger than either of us imagined. Lyra looked around the small apartment, then back at him. For the first time since they had met, she no longer seemed like someone simply completing a contract. She seemed comfortable. And though neither of them noticed it yet, the little apartment already felt just a little less lonely than it had that morning. The first evening of their temporary marriage produced a problem neither of them had considered. There was only one bedroom. Adrian scratched the back of his neck. I can sleep on the sofa. Lyra looked at the sofa. It appears to be shorter than you. It is. It also appears to be broken. It definitely is. The apartment interrupted before either of them could continue. I have analyzed 43,000 successful marriages. Adrian sighed. I already dislike where this is going. The healthiest solution is communication. Good. You should discuss your feelings. We just met. I detect avoidance. I detect a software update in your future. The apartment ignored him. Lyra smiled politely. I don't mind taking the sofa. The sofa folds in the middle. Intentionally? No, it lost the argument with gravity last year. She laughed softly. I've survived less comfortable places. Something in the way she said it caught Adrian's attention. It wasn't sadness. It was experience, as though she truly had slept in places far worse than a damaged sofa. Before he could ask what she meant, a loud alarm echoed across the colony. A mechanical voice filled the streets outside. Attention. Atmospheric pressure fluctuation detected. Maintenance personnel report immediately. Adrian stood so quickly his chair nearly tipped over. I have to go. You repair the atmosphere? I help keep everyone breathing. That sounds important. I've been told oxygen is popular. She smiled. I'll come with you. You don't have to. I know. There was no hesitation in her voice, only quiet certainty. Minutes later, they hurried through crowded streets beneath the glowing energy dome. Maintenance vehicles sped overhead while emergency drones projected flashing guidance lights onto the pavement. People moved quickly, but there was surprisingly little panic. Life on frontier colonies had taught everyone that disasters were simply another appointment. The central processor tower dominated the skyline like a silver mountain. Engineers rushed through its entrance carrying tool cases and portable fusion cells. As Adrian entered, dozens of co-workers turned toward him. One of them grinned immediately. There he is! Another pointed at Lyra. So, the rumors were true. Adrian frowned. What rumors? You disappeared for one day and came back married. I left yesterday afternoon. Exactly. The older mechanic folded his arms dramatically. Fast work. It's temporary. That's what everyone says. Laughter spread across the room. Lyra leaned slightly toward Adrian. I like your co-workers. You won't after another 5 minutes. The supervisor approached carrying a holographic schematic. You can flirt later. We're not flirting. I wasn't talking to you. He handed Adrian the projection. Sector 7 pressure regulator stopped responding. Adrian studied the diagram. That doesn't make sense. The backup network also failed. Impossible. That's why I'm paying you. You pay me to fix things. I also pay you to explain impossible things after you fix them. Adrian sighed. Fair. He and 2 technicians climbed onto a maintenance platform that raced upward inside the enormous tower. Below them, countless pipes carried breathable atmosphere through the colony. Blue energy pulsed through transparent conduits like glowing rivers. Lyra quietly observed everything. Beautiful, she whispered. Adrian smiled. Most people call it plumbing. Only humans could make life support sound boring. When they reached the damaged regulator, Adrian immediately frowned. The control crystal is burned out. His assistant nodded. We don't have another. Adrian looked around. No replacement means we shut down half the colony. The assistant swallowed nervously. Lyra stepped closer. May I look? The two engineers exchanged uncertain glances. It's delicate, Adrian warned. I'll be careful. She examined the damaged crystal for several silent seconds. Then her fingertips hovered just above its fractured surface. She didn't touch it. She simply watched, almost as if listening. Her eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Finally, she spoke. The crystal isn't broken. Adrian looked confused. It definitely is. No. She pointed toward a microscopic junction hidden beneath the housing. The resonance circuit has inverted. Both engineers stared. Adrian blinked twice. What? If you rotate the field 90 degrees, it should recover. The assistant laughed awkwardly. That's not how these systems work. Lyra tilted her head. Are you certain? Adrian hesitated. He had repaired these machines for years. Yet, something about the confidence in her voice made him curious. He adjusted the circuit, activated the regulator. The crystal immediately reignited with brilliant blue light. Pressure readings across the entire tower stabilized. Every warning alarm disappeared. Silence filled the maintenance platform. The assistant slowly looked from the monitor to Lyra. How did you know that? She smiled gently. I've always been lucky. Adrian wasn't convinced. Luck didn't explain knowledge that experienced engineers had never encountered. As they rode the platform back down, he glanced sideways at her. You've seen that kind of regulator before? Not exactly. Something similar? She looked ahead without answering immediately. A long time ago. Before Adrian could ask another question, the supervisor ran toward them, laughing with relief. You saved us! He slapped Adrian on the shoulder. I knew sending the newlywed would improve productivity. Adrian pointed toward Lyra. Actually, she solved it. The supervisor stared, then grinned. Excellent. He looked directly at Adrian. Marry her again. The story of the repaired atmospheric regulator spread through Kepra 9 much faster than Adrian would have liked. By the next morning, 3 different people congratulated him for bringing home the smartest engineer on the planet. One insisted she had personally saved the colony. Another claimed she had repaired the system using telepathy. A third confidently explained that Lyra had intimidated the machinery into working again. Adrian had stopped correcting people after breakfast. You've become famous, he said as they walked through the market district. Lyra looked around at the cheerful vendors. I've done nothing extraordinary. You accidentally rescued the colony. I merely noticed something. The engineers have been arguing about it all night. She smiled. I hope politely. They're engineers. So? No. Not remotely. A delivery drone suddenly descended in front of them. Citizen Adrian Hale. Yes? You have received a complimentary dessert. I have? From the engineering union. The compartment opened, revealing an elaborate cake decorated with tiny edible stars. Printed across the top were the words, Thank your wife. Lyra covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. Adrian looked toward the sky. I'm never escaping this. The drone wasn't finished. It is also your anniversary. Adrian frowned. It has been 2 days. Congratulations. It has been 2 days. Our records indicate you remain married. Fair enough. The drone flew away before he could argue further. They carried the cake back toward the apartment. Halfway there, Lyra suddenly slowed. She looked toward the far end of the street. What is it? Adrian asked. I thought She stopped. What? Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. For the briefest moment she had felt something. A faint vibration, not through the ground, through the air, as though a distant machine had awakened somewhere far beyond the colony. The sensation vanished almost instantly. She forced herself to smile. I was distracted. Adrian accepted the explanation, though he noticed her eyes quietly scanning the crowded street before they continued walking. Later that afternoon, Adrian returned to work while Lyra remained at the apartment. She spent the first hour organizing shelves that Adrian had apparently considered organized enough. The apartment watched the process. You are rearranging 42% of the household. I'm only moving tools. Resident Adrian Hale locates tools through instinct rather than logic. I noticed. He calls it creative organization. I call it archaeology. The apartment processed that for a moment. Accurate. She laughed softly. By evening, the workshop looked almost civilized. Adrian entered carrying another toolbox. He stopped in the doorway. Where did everything go? It's exactly where it belongs. My wrench. Second drawer. He opened it. There it was. My plasma cutter. Third cabinet. Correct again. My magnetic calibrator. She pointed without even looking. Top shelf. Exactly where she said. Adrian slowly turned toward her. This is unsettling. I simply paid attention. I've lived here 6 years. You should try it sometime. He blinked. Was that a joke? I believe so. The apartment interrupted proudly. Humor detected. Adrian looked at Lyra in mock disbelief. You're encouraging it. I spend too much time with you. He couldn't argue with that. During dinner, rain began striking the transparent dome overhead. Not ordinary rain. Tiny glowing droplets created by the colony's atmospheric stabilizers. The entire sky shimmered with soft blue light. Lyra stood near the window watching the luminous rainfall. It's beautiful. It only happens after major pressure corrections. So, yesterday caused this. Looks like it. She remained silent for several seconds, then quietly asked, Do you ever miss Earth? Adrian leaned back in his chair. Sometimes. What do you miss most? He thought carefully. The oceans. I've never seen one. You've never. He stopped. You've never seen an ocean. She slowly shook her head. I've seen lakes, rivers, artificial seas, but never a real ocean. There was something almost childlike in the way she said it, as though she had spent years imagining something everyone else took for granted. Adrian smiled. One day I'll show you. She turned toward him. You think you'll go back? I hadn't planned to. Then why promise? He shrugged. Because promises don't always care about plans. For just a moment, Lyra looked as though she might say something important. Instead, she simply smiled. I'd like that. And that night, long after Adrian had fallen asleep on the repaired sofa, which still protested loudly every time he moved, Lyra quietly stepped onto the apartment balcony. Above the colony, stars stretched endlessly across the darkness. She closed her eyes. The strange vibration from earlier returned. Slightly stronger this time. Far away. Almost impossible to notice. Almost. She opened her eyes toward one particular star near the horizon. It wasn't moving like the others. It paused, then disappeared. Someone had entered faster than light transit. Her expression grew thoughtful. You're searching, she whispered so softly that even the night almost failed to hear it. Behind her, the apartment's door slid open a few centimeters. I detected insomnia. Lyra smiled without turning around. I couldn't sleep. I recommend warm tea. I'll remember that. The door closed again. She looked back toward the stars one final time before returning inside. Whatever she had sensed, Whatever or whoever had crossed that distant stretch of space. She hoped it had nothing to do with her. Deep inside, however, she already knew hope and certainty were rarely the same thing. 3 days passed without another emergency. For Kipra 9, that qualified as a holiday. Adrian spent his mornings repairing maintenance drones, his afternoons crawling through ventilation shafts, and his evenings discovering that sharing an apartment with another person required an astonishing number of negotiations. "Why are there 6 different screwdrivers on the dining table?" Lyra asked. "They're organized. They're pretending to be dinner guests. I was using them. You were sleeping. They were waiting." She looked at the 6 tools, then at him. "I admire your loyalty." Before Adrian could defend the honor of his screwdrivers, the apartment chimed. Household announcement. Both of them instinctively looked upward. "You have now lived together for 72 hours. "Congratulations," Adrian guessed. "According to my relationship archive, this is the point where couples either purchase decorative plants or have their first argument." Lyra smiled. "I vote for the plant." Adrian nodded. "The plant seems less expensive." "I have already ordered both." "Both what?" "A decorative plant and an argument." Adrian sighed. "I don't even want to know." Later that morning, Adrian received another assignment from the maintenance division. A communications relay on the northern ridge had stopped responding after a magnetic dust storm. "It should only take an hour," he told Lyra while gathering his equipment. "I'll come. You don't have to climb icy towers just because we're pretending to be married." She folded her arms. "I thought we agreed I was helping because I wanted to." "Fair point." They boarded a maintenance crawler that rolled across the rocky plains beyond the colony dome. Outside, Kepra 9 looked wild and ancient. Dark mountains stretched toward the horizon, while enormous crystal formations emerged from the ground like frozen lightning. Strange 6-legged creatures wandered peacefully between glowing mineral fields, ignoring the passing vehicle entirely. Lyra watched everything with quiet fascination. "You still look at this world like it's new." "I enjoy seeing places through human eyes." "What does that mean?" She hesitated. "I mean..." She looked out the window. "I spent much of my life traveling." "You've seen many colonies." "Something like that." Adrian noticed another answer, carefully avoided. He didn't press further. The relay tower stood nearly 200 meters tall. Its silver framework reached toward the clouds where satellites occasionally flashed overhead. Adrian climbed while Lyra remained below. Halfway up, his communicator crackled. "You were right," he said. "The magnetic coils fused together." "Can they be repaired?" "They can." A loud metallic snap echoed through the structure. Adrian froze. "That's new. What happened?" "The maintenance platform just locked itself." "Is that bad?" "I'd describe it as creatively inconvenient." He tried the emergency controls. Nothing. The platform refused to move. Lyra looked up. "Can you override it?" "I'm trying." The relay suddenly emitted a pulse of blue energy. Every screen on Adrian's wrist terminal went black. Then the tower began humming. Deep, rhythmic, almost musical. Lyra's expression changed instantly. The sound wasn't random. She recognized it. Her eyes narrowed. "No," she whispered the word before realizing she had spoken aloud. Adrian looked down. "What?" "Nothing." But she already knew. The relay wasn't malfunctioning. Something had remotely connected to it. Something using a communication protocol far older than the colony itself. She stepped toward the tower's control panel. Her fingers hovered over the interface. For one brief second, she almost entered a sequence from memory. Then she stopped herself. Instead, she used the colony's standard controls. The panel rejected every command. Adrian called down again. "It's locked me out." "I noticed." She quietly examined the glowing symbols appearing across the display. Most engineers would have dismissed them as corrupted code. She recognized them as compressed mathematical harmonics. A language, ancient, elegant, dangerously familiar. Her heartbeat quickened. Not here. Not already. She deliberately looked away before Adrian could notice the concern in her eyes. Just then, another maintenance vehicle arrived. A cheerful engineer leaned out the window. "Hail!" Adrian shouted back. "I could use a ladder." The engineer laughed. "You climbed 200 meters. I regret my confidence." Within minutes, the rescue team manually disengaged the platform. Adrian safely climbed back to the ground. He dusted off his gloves dramatically. "I meant to inspect it from every angle." "Very thorough," Lyra said. "I believe in commitment." The older engineer slapped Adrian's shoulder. "I heard your wife helped save the atmosphere." Adrian smiled. "The rumors continue." The engineer looked at Lyra. "Think she can fix this tower too?" Before Adrian answered, Lyra politely shook her head. "I'm afraid this problem needs a communications specialist." It wasn't entirely untrue. The real solution required knowledge no one on the colony was supposed to possess. On the drive home, Adrian noticed she had become unusually quiet. "You've hardly spoken." "I'm thinking." "About the relay?" She nodded. "It bothered me." "Because you couldn't solve it?" She looked toward the distant mountains. "No." A pause followed. "Because I almost could." Adrian frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She smiled, gentle but mysterious. "Sometimes we remember things we'd rather forget." The answer lingered between them for the rest of the journey. That evening, after Adrian had fallen asleep, Lyra quietly opened the apartment window and looked toward the northern sky. Far beyond the colony, hidden among countless ordinary stars, one faint point of light flashed 3 times. Not naturally, not randomly. A signal. She closed her eyes. "They found the trail," she whispered. The words disappeared into the night, unheard by anyone. Except, somewhere unimaginably far away, someone had already been listening. The signal returned 4 nights later. This time it did not remain hidden. Every communication screen across HFY flickered for exactly 1 second before returning to normal. Most people blamed the colony's aging satellites. Lyra knew better. She quietly switched off the apartment window display. Adrian noticed. "You've been watching the stars every evening." "I have." "Expecting someone?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Trying not to." Before he could ask another question, the apartment cheerfully interrupted. "Reminder, your temporary marriage contract expires tomorrow." Silence filled the room. The apartment continued. "Would you like me to prepare separation documents?" Neither of them answered. The apartment waited. Awkward silence detected. Adrian finally looked at Lyra. "I don't want you to leave." She smiled sadly. "I know. No, I mean..." He took a slow breath. "I stopped pretending days ago." She lowered her eyes. "So did I." Another soft chime echoed through the apartment. "I have canceled the separation forms," the apartment announced. "We didn't tell you to." I sensed the conversation was progressing efficiently. For once, neither of them complained. A violent alarm suddenly rolled across the colony. Not the familiar maintenance warning. Something deeper. Something older. Outside, people stopped walking. Above the energy dome, a single star seemed to descend toward the planet. Only it wasn't a star. It was a ship. Long, silver, elegant beyond anything built by the colonies. It emerged from faster-than-light transit without firing a weapon, without broadcasting threats. Instead, one message reached every receiver. "We have found you, Princess." Adrian slowly turned toward Lyra. She closed her eyes. "I hoped I'd have more time." Knew them. Yes. They called you Princess. She nodded once. My name isn't only Lyra. The words came quietly. I was born Lyra Vilas Aranor, heir to the Aranor dynasty. Adrian simply stared. I ran away years ago. Why? Because everyone loved the throne. She looked directly into his eyes. No one loved me. A transport craft descended into the colony square. Its doors opened. Several elegantly armored aliens stepped onto the street. They looked remarkably human, except for their long ears. The oldest among them bowed deeply. Your Highness. Lyra remained perfectly still. I surrendered that title. You surrendered your palace. He smiled gently. Not your birth. The commander looked toward Adrian. So, this is the human. Adrian awkwardly waved. Hello. The commander studied him for several silent seconds, then unexpectedly smiled. You appear disappointingly ordinary. Adrian nodded. I hear that a lot. You repaired an atmospheric network using coffee filters. Who told you? We investigated. I was hoping that report disappeared. It did not. Even Lyra laughed. The commander became serious again. The Imperial Council requests your return. I decline. The Council expected that answer. They always do. He looked toward Adrian once more. You abandoned an empire. His eyes shifted back to Lyra. For him, she answered without hesitation. I abandoned loneliness. The commander fell silent. No argument followed. No threats, only understanding. After a long pause, he reached into his robes and removed a small crystalline emblem. The council also prepared for this possibility. He offered it to her. If you would not rule from the throne. He smiled faintly. Then rule by example. Lyra accepted the crystal. Its soft blue light spread across the square before fading. The commander bowed once more. We will tell them the heir has chosen her future. He turned toward his officers. Prepare for departure. Adrian blinked. That's it? The commander looked back. Love has already defeated enough empires. Within minutes, the great ship rose silently into orbit. No battle came. No invasion. Only stars. The colony slowly returned to life. People resumed walking. Children pointed excitedly at the disappearing vessel. Someone immediately began inventing exaggerated stories. By morning, one rumor claimed Adrian had personally negotiated peace while holding a wrench. His supervisor congratulated him anyway. I always knew paperwork would save the galaxy. It mostly gave me headaches. History rarely remembers the headaches. That afternoon, Adrian and Lyra returned to the Civil Companionship Services office. Director Soren smiled the moment she saw them. I assume you're here regarding the contract. Adrian nodded. We'd like to change it. She opened a holographic form. Permanent marriage. Lyra reached for Adrian's hand before he could answer. Permanent. The director smiled as if she had expected nothing else. Several weeks later, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Adrian still repaired impossible machines. Lyra still claimed she was only lucky whenever she quietly solved problems no one else understood. The apartment remained everyone's greatest challenge. One evening, it proudly announced, I have calculated your probability of lifelong happiness. Adrian sighed. Should I ask? 99.8%. What about the other 0.2? The apartment paused dramatically. Unexpected relatives. Lyra laughed so hard she nearly dropped her tea. Adrian looked out through the window at the endless stars. Not long ago, he had believed 5 credits had purchased nothing more than temporary paperwork. Instead, they had given him trust. A home that no longer felt empty. A future he had never imagined possible. He gently squeezed Lyra's hand. She squeezed back. Beyond the colony dome, The stars continued their endless journey across the universe. For the first time in many years, neither of them felt alone beneath them.